Hey guys, so today what I want to do is learn a little bit about the motors that are used for the Barnabas Rover, which are called DC motors. And then after we do that, I'm going to show you how to wire it to the Uno here, and then also learn how to program them. Okay, so step one is let's learn about the motors. So let's move one of them away. So these are called DC motors, all right? And what we see here is that there's actually this silver part right here. Well, that's the DC motor, and there are these plastic buckles here. And I'm just going to take this off to show you as a demonstration, okay? So these buckles. And I wouldn't necessarily do this because I don't want you to mess up your motor assembly here, but I want to show you what's going on here. All right, so this is just to fasten the DC motor onto here, and then I can pull this out, okay? And if you look at this, this looks like a traditional motor. DC motors are found in all sorts of things like printers or even garage doors, and all sorts of stuff like that. What's another one? Laundry machines also have DC motors. The things about DC motors, it's super easy to turn on. All right, so you notice there's two wires. You have a red wire and also a black wire. So all you have to do to turn it on is actually just give it power. So if you take a battery and connect plus to one side here and minus to this side, the motor will start spinning. All right, and so that's super easy. Now, if you want it to spin the other way, all you have to do is reverse the power onto the wires. So actually, let me grab a battery and show you what that looks like. All right, so I have my motor and my battery here, and let's see if this works. Okay, so I'm gonna try to hold it up close to you so you can see this is the little gear here, okay, that's connected to the shaft of the motor, and I'm going to connect black to the minus, red to the plus, and I think what we got here, yes, I don't know if you can tell, but it is spinning here. Okay, now if I want it to reverse, all I gotta do is turn this way, and what happens is my direction of the rotation of the motor will change. Now you can't really tell later because this is so small here. Later what I'll do is connect this back and then also put on a wheel, and then you'll really be able to tell. Okay, so this is the DC motor. Again, the DC motor is super easy to turn on. I just showed you I could just take a regular battery, turn it on. I can make it go one way and the other way. So super easy. So that's why it's used in a lot of things where you don't have complicated electronics, right? Because to turn it on, you just turn it on, and to turn it off, you just turn off the power. And then to switch directions, you just switch the power. So you can see that it's not very complicated if you're trying to program it, right? Now you might have a question about speed, like how do I control the speed of the motor? Well, that's just based on the size of your battery. If you give it more power, it goes faster. If you go less power, it goes slower. So if I had two batteries connected, that's more power or more voltage, it's going to go faster. If I have a smaller battery than this, it's going to go slower. Okay, so let me write some of this stuff down so that we don't forget. Okay, so we're talking about DC motors. Okay, let's get this right. DC motors, right? Okay, so the first thing is that it goes clockwise and counterclockwise, meaning it goes one direction forward, and it can go backwards as well, or counterclockwise. All right, and then number two, give power and it turns on. So those are the two things that we want to remember for DC motors. It can go both ways, clockwise or counterclockwise, and then all you have to do is give it power and it turns on. All right, so let's talk more about what's going on here. All right, this here is what we call a gearbox. Okay, so if you look inside here, and you can take a look at the one inside your kit, you're going to notice there's a whole system of gears there. Okay, now what do gears do? They do two things. Okay, let's talk about that. I'll just write it as I talk. Gear box. Okay, the gearbox is going to do two things. Number one, it's going to slow down. Okay, so what's going to happen is that this, when it turns on, it's super fast. Okay, but then when you put it into here and it starts turning the gears inside here, it's going to go through connect from one gear to another to a bunch of, it's a gear system where it's transferring motion from this gear here to another gear in there, which controls another gear in there. And then by the time it gets out here, it's actually going to move both of these shafts right here. All right, this is going to end up being a lot slower, and that's just a part of it's called gear ratio. But as you gear things down like that and they go through more and more gears, the output, which is the final thing that's moving, is going to be slower. So why would you want that? Like, why would you always want to go slower? Well, you don't necessarily always want to go slower, but what you're going to get is this. So you may go slower, but you also get stronger. Okay, so what that means is that when this turns, when this turns on, it's super weak. It may be super fast, but it's also super weak. Okay, so I'll be able to, like, if it's moving, I'll be able to stop it with my finger just like that. But once you go through the gearbox, it's going to go slower here. Okay, but it's going to be a lot stronger, a lot firmer. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, we want this thing to be able to move a whole car. So that's why we don't mind it being a little bit slower. We want to make sure it's strong enough to move the car. And that's why we're using a gearbox here. All right, so that's enough about that. I'm going to put this back together here. Let's see. And if you're adventurous and you have a AA battery, you can definitely do what I'm doing to just try out. All right, you just want to be careful. All right, so you get that. And it should pop out and then just kind of pop back in there. No big deal. Let's put my buckle. Okay. All right. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now let's do that thing where, you know what? I'm gonna put my wheel on here so you can actually see what's going on. Let's see. We got to make sure there's a guide here. Make sure that fits together. There we go. Okay. Now you should be able to see what happens. All right. So black wire there, red wire up here, and you can see it moving. So right now it's moving clockwise, and watch when I flip it, or I go red on the minus of the battery and black here. It's tough to do this with one hand, right? So let me get this situated, and then it should be going counterclockwise. Yep, going counterclockwise. See? And you can see that the motion is pretty slow right now, but it's also a lot stronger. I mean, I could still stop it, and I didn't fasten that tight enough, but I could still stop it, but it's definitely stronger. All right. And also another thing to consider, guys, is that we're actually going to be using 5 of these to control the DC motors. So it's going to be maybe around 5 times stronger and faster. Okay, but this is just for demonstration. Okay. All right. So now that we know that, let's talk about this guy. Okay. So this is called a DC driver. All right. And the DC driver is going to be controlling our DC motors. I've got one here, and I also have a second setup here. So let me set this one up too. Okay. Here we go. Sometimes these get kind of tough. I like to put it on the table and push it in there. Okay. All right, so this will be eventually mounted to your car. You might already have these mounted. I'm just leaving it off for now. All right. Now, what we want to do is look at the setup here, the labels here. Okay. There's a motor A, and there's also a motor B. So what you want to do is I'm going to take one of these and put it into these screw terminals into motor A. All right, and you see it's red and black. It doesn't really matter which one you do. You'll see that it does make a difference, but we can adjust things in code. This will make more sense later. So I'm going to take the red and just go here. And the way these screw terminal things work is that if you loosen the screw up here, what happens is that you're able to open up. It's kind of like a garage or like Star Wars blast door. Okay, if you loosen it, the Star Wars blast door goes up, and then you can stick this in there. Okay, and then you tighten by tightening the screw. All right, and then it becomes tight. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and do this, and then we'll go to the next step. Let's see if I can do this real quick. So loosen, stick in, and tighten. Okay, that one was a little bit loose, so there you go, and tighten. You know what? I'm not doing a very good job there. Let me pause this. I will tighten it up, and then we'll continue. All right, here we go. I've got my wires all in now. So a couple tricks as I was kind of doing this. One of them is like the screwdriver is a little bit small, so maybe you got to give it a little bit more, more muscle in terms of getting it real tight. And the other thing is that these wires, what can help is if you kind of make sure it gets all the way in there. You might need to wiggle it so that it goes through the blast door, so that you can close it down, and it can actually create a good clamp. Okay, so now that it's in there, let's talk about these signals here. Okay, now it's going to be hard to see here, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pins here, and I'm going to go ahead and bring over a screen shot. Here we go. This is actually from the website here of the pin connections. Okay, here we go. All right, so you'll notice we have two DC motors, DC motor 1, DC motor 2. Those have been already connected. And then we have these 6 signals here. This is the driver board: B, IB, BIA, VCC, GND, AIB, and AIA. All right, so the A's right down here, that's going to control motor A. Okay, so that's going to be this one right here. And then the B's up here are going to be controlling motor B. So yeah, it says DC motor 1, DC motor 2. This should actually probably say DC motor B and DC motor A. Okay, just to be less confusing. But so in this case, just ignore that. Okay, just pretend DC motor 1 says DC motor B and DC motor 2 says DC motor A. All right. So let's first do this. Let's connect the A connections. All right. So I'm gonna take our we need these socket to pin connectors. All right. So I'm gonna take two colors that are not black and red. I'm gonna take white and gray, and they're not black and red because we're gonna use black and red for power. All right. So I'm gonna put the gray one into. It says I'm gonna put it into AIB. AIB. Here we go. All right. And then the other side, I'm just going to move this. The other side, I'm going to connect to my Uno, and it says AIB goes to pin, sorry, AIA. Getting confused. I'm sorry, guys. AIB. Okay, I've connected to AIB. AIB connects to pin number 11 on my diagram there. So pin number 11. Here we go. There we go. All right, let's get my other one. This one's going to go to AIA. Okay. That's going to go to pin number 8. There we go. All right, cool. So that's motor A. Now let's do motor B. Motor B. So I'm going to use, how about blue and purple? That works for me. All right. I'm going to go to BIB. And then here's a note. So on my board, BIB is actually B2A. All right, so some of these driver boards, they just have a little slightly different naming convention. So in this one, my BIB is actually B2A. Okay, so you might have that too. Okay, and then so BIB goes to pin 10. Cool. Okay, and then BIA goes to pin number 10. And I confused myself. All right, let's take that out. So we're doing this together because sometimes this can happen. It gets especially the naming of these pins are like B1A, BIB, it gets confusing. So okay, my B2A on my board, okay, is the same as BIB. So BIB goes to pin 12 on my diagram. So it goes to pin 12. There we go. Okay, we're getting there. And then my BIA on my diagram goes to pin number 10. Okay. It's a little bit confusing because all the pin numbers, pin names look all the same, but there you go. All right, now let's do VCC and GND. So VCC, I'm going to use my red color. Let's stick this in. VCC here. That's going to go to 5V on my board here. 5V. There we go. Okay. And then GND, I'm going to use black wire. Goes to GND. Stick this in, and we are done. Let's slide this guy in here. Okay, there we go. GND. Cool. All right, so there we go. Now that it's wired up, we're actually going to be able to move both of these motors to make sure that everything's wired correctly, or actually at least to make sure at least you have your power on. Let's go ahead and plug our cable in, and once we connect this to our computer, a red light should turn on there. So let's hope that this works. Okay. Okay, it turned on, and looks like this wheel is moving. Why it's moving? Maybe because this actually has some code on it already. So you know what? Let's clear this all out because that's gonna just confuse us. All right, so let's do setup. This is this brand new program here. See how fast I can do this. Void setup, void loop. Do you remember? These are the two Arduino functions that always need to be there. Let's upload. So blank setup and blank loop. Okay, success. All right, so what we've done now is we cleared out the code. All right, so the first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and set up all the pins for controlling the motors. We connected 4 pins. So going back to here, let's see if I can find my lesson here. Here we go. Here we go. All right. So we have four pins that are controlling the driver board. Okay. So 10, 12, 10, 11, and 8. So let's go ahead and set those up here. Let's set up the pin modes. Okay. So what we want to do is say pin mode 8 as an output. Okay. These signals are going to be going out from the Uno to the driver board. So that's why we're calling it output. 10 is also an output. Over the other two, pin mode 11 was an output, and pin mode, what was the last one here? Let's go back. 10, 12, 8, 11. Oh, 12. Okay. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind here is 8 and 11 control motor A, 10 and 12 control motor B. So let's put them together. 10 and 12 are friends. And 8 and 11 are friends. So I'm going to group them together here. Alright, and I'll even do this. Let's see. 10 and 12 are going to be controlling motor B. Eight and 11 control motor A. Okay. So let's do this. All right. So earlier I put in the battery, and what did we do, right? I showed you that I give you power. If I give the DC motor power, it starts to spin. And if I flip it, it spins the other way, right? All right, so what's going on now is that the motor pins, so pin number 10 and 12, are going to provide the power to motor B, and pin numbers 8 and 11 are going to provide the power to motor A. All right? So the way that power works, or even the better name, the better word I should use, the more precise word is actually voltage. Okay, so this battery gives it voltage, all right, and it's precisely 1.5 volts, all right, to the DC motor. Now what we can do with our pins is that the 2 pins, let's just talk about motor B. So 2 pins number 10 and 12, those 2 pins can provide a voltage to the DC motor to make it turn on. So how does voltage works? Well, voltage works like this. You need one pin to be minus, and you need the other pin to be plus. And then you're going to have a voltage there. All right, so let's do this. Let's turn on motor B. Okay. And this is acting a little funny. You see it's getting cut off there, so I'm going to do a refresh. It should fix that. There we go. Actually not working. 1 second. Okay, there we go. After another refresh, we were good to go. Alright, so let's turn on motor B. So what I'll do is say digital write 10 high. So that means pin 10 is going to be my plus. And then digital write 10 low. Sorry, not 10. 12 low. Okay, so pins 10 and 12 are going to be providing my voltage to motor B. And it's going to be 10 is going to be the plus, and the 12 is going to be the minus. Now you might ask, how many volts? So this says 1.5 volts. How many volts will be going in through pin 10 and 12? Well, if you remember, we connected the VCC, this red wire, to 5V. So it's actually going to be 5 volts. So it should be a lot faster than when we use this. All right, so let's try this. Hopefully my motor B will turn on. Where's my motor B? This one. This one. This one is my motor B, because I looked at it. It's connected to the motor B blast doors there. All right, motor B, please turn on. I'm going to upload. It's going to be sending 5 volts. And it is on. Check it out. And it's pretty fast. All right, so now let's flip it. Now, how do we flip it? And what will happen when we flip it? When we flip it, it will go the other way. Remember, I showed you with the battery. If you flip the minus and plus, it goes the other way. So let's change this to low and high. So I flipped it. It should go the other way. And it is successfully going the other way. Okay, and it's trying to run away from me right now. So let's turn it both off. So to turn it off, you just have to set them both low. Then it turns off. You can also set them both high. So if you have 2 pluses or 2 minuses for the voltage, then it's not going to work. You always need 1 plus and 1 minus. Okay, so that's why if you do both high, it's going to not do anything either. All right, cool. So we turned on motor B. Let's also turn on motor A. So I'm going to copy this, except change the pins. Motor A is 8 and 11. So 8 and 11. And let's do, first let's do 8 is minus and 11 is plus. Let's upload. It should work, guys. There we go. It's going counterclockwise right now. And then if we flip it, it should go the other way. There we go. And let's stop it. All right, time for challenges. All right, so now that you know the basics of how this works, and actually before we kind of go to the challenges, what's the role of this driver board thing? Okay, so the role is this. Okay, so we want to control 2 motors, right? And we want to give it 5 volts. Instead of like trying to put a bunch of batteries on this and connecting it to our board, that'd be kind of crazy, right? So you have this driver board that takes the 5 volts from the Uno, okay, and then through the circuitry on here, you're now able to just use those 4 pins to make the 5-volt power go to both of these motors. And not only that, you're able to control the polarity, or that's a fancy word. Polarity is a fancy word of saying the direction of the voltage. And that's how we're able to make both wheels to go back and forth. All right. So the driver board's job is it's able to convert your 5-volt power from the Uno to whatever it needs to be so that it can control both of these motors at the same time. All right, and not just control meaning turning on and off, but also moving both directions for the wheels. And that's important because you want your car to be able to go forward and also backwards. All right. So let's look at some challenges. So I've showed you how to do basic movement, and here are your challenges. All right. Number 1 is just do what I did. Get both wheels to move back and forth. Okay? And you could do this one at a time. All right. All right. Challenge 2. Move both wheels forward at the same time. Okay. Number 3, move both wheels backward at the same time. So you like the number 2 is your car. If it's if this is assembled on your car is moving forward, and then backwards for number 3. Number 4, move both wheels forward for 1 second, stop, then move backwards for 1 second, stop, and then repeat. So it's going to be like this. Both wheels move forward, 1 second, stop. Both wheels move backwards, 1 second, stop, and then repeat. Forward, back. So it'll be like a car just going like forward, backward, forward, backward, forward, backward, forward, backward, like that. All right, so give that a shot. Once you get comfortable with this, you can start talking about changing speeds. Okay, that's another reason why this driver board is cool. Like, not only will you be able to turn it off and on and move both directions, you can actually change speed. But I'll show you how to do that later on. First, let's get comfortable with the basics of motion. All right, have fun with that. I will see you guys later.